The home of Helios, the ruler of the wind. Poseidon drove out snakes from the island, and Hercules buried a titan here. The Greek island of Tinos. The entire island, having been manipulated by human hands, is all terraced.
This is a strange place to sail because it's very gusty. The wind will drop to 10 knots, under 10 knots, and pick up to over 20 knots. And the wind direction is changing pretty regularly because of the geography of the mountain. So sometimes you're on a broad reach, then it switches to a beam reach, then you get a gust and it brings you back onto a broad reach, then you round a little point, a little cape, and you're on the other side of a mountain, then you're close hauling. So it's very active sailing. You gotta always be on the watch out for the gusts too. You don't want to get caught off guard.
This area of Greece is notorious for being one of the windiest areas in the whole country. Tinos being the windiest island in the whole country, that is why the god Helios has been said to have resided here. And we definitely felt some wind today. Andros and Tinos are both very mountainous islands, and so when the wind goes around the islands, it gets thrown all about.
And now the wind has dropped to 6.5 knots, but we've got a gust coming right here.
But what's nice is that since you're in the lee of the island, the sea is completely flat, and even though it is big wind, there's no waves, so you get to rip along quite speedily.
That was a 25 knot gust.
And sailing along to legendary islands that nearly nobody knows about.
And you know what else is legendary that almost nobody knows about? Captain Salve. An all-natural skin balm packed with ancient herbs worthy of the Olympic gods themselves. Get yours over at CaptainSalve.com. Link is in the description.
But what we have to be watching out for are the gusts, because the gusts can actually be dangerous. As long as you're paying attention, it's all good, because the gusts can change the direction of the wind. Let's just say you've got the wind and it's coming due north. Sometimes you can get a gust that is 35, 45, 50, even more degrees off that wind, which when you're sailing can cause some big problems if you're not paying attention. There's multiple myths that are associated with the island of Tinos. One, like I said, is the god Helios, the god of the wind, resided on Tinos. Another is that the island was plagued by serpents, and Poseidon came and drove out the serpents out of the island and made it safe for the inhabitants. And though both of those are interesting and poignant in ways, I want to talk a little bit about Hercules. Everybody's heard about Hercules, but nobody's heard about Tinos. Or very, very few people have heard about Tinos. While sailing, we actually did notice what looked to be the beginnings of a wildfire, so Nikki called that into the local authorities.
I think it's time to shake out a reef. So when I tell you to, you're gonna head up a little bit so that I can raise the main.
There was a time in prehistory in the legends that was known as the Gigantomachy. I don't know how you pronounce it. Basically, it was a war between the gods of Olympus and the giants of the land, the Titans. Where did the giants come from? Well,
back when the world was new,
the giants came from Gaia, Earth, and from Uranus, the sky. Uranus was castrated by his son Kronos, time. The blood from that castration mixed with Gaia and produced the Titans, or the giants. They were massive, huge, powerful beings.
gigantic brutes called Titans ran amok.
Many times they were depicted with snake-like lower bodies.
And then along came Zeus. He hurled his thunderbolt.
Titan! Look at you in your squalid prison! Who put you down there? And now that I set you free, what is the first thing you are going to do? Destroy him!
And the prophecy was that they could only be defeated by a mortal working alongside the gods
and that mortal was Hercules. It's said that the Titans launched an attack on Mount Olympus against the Olympic gods.
My lord and lady, the Titans have escaped, and they're practically at our gates!
Sound the alarm! Launch an immediate counterattack! Go! Go!
Gone, babe.
And the gods fought, but they needed Hercules in order to defeat the Titans. Now, Hercules was a man of immense strength and cunning and was able to fulfill the prophecy and work alongside the gods and defeat the Titans. And when he slew the Titans, he buried them across the world, but he buried some of them underneath the island of Tinos.
It may seem impossible, that's the gospel truth.
And that is what is said to cause the tremors and the earthquakes and the volcanic activity in the area, is the Titans moving in their graves. One of the things I find most fascinating about these two islands is that both of them are nearly completely terraced. Tinos is completely terraced. I don't know if there is an ounce of land on Tinos that has not been terraced. And if y'all think I'm tripping, just look. This is Google Maps right here, and I'm just going to zoom into random parts on the island, and you're going to see that it's all terraced. The whole island, it's all terraced. The dating of those terraces are said to go all the way back to ancient times. Which ones, how much went all the way back to ancient times? Well, your guess is as good as mine. But that's crazy, bro.
It's about 10 a.m. here on Tinos last night. In about an hour, the wind went from blowing a solid 20 knots to not at all. And so now there's zero wind, and it is wicked hot already. I mean, we're in the middle of this heat wave, but it's hot right now. We're gonna go in and rent a car and drive around the island and enjoy the air conditioning that a car will provide.
Tinos is also a unique island because it is the most pilgrimaged to spot in Greece by locals. Because on the island of Tinos is a church called Panagia Evangelistria, also known as the Church of Our Lady Tinos, and the peak of the pilgrimage is August 15th on the Feast of the Assumption. What makes this church so special, a local nun, Saint Pelagia. So Saint Pelagia had a series of visions in which the Virgin Mary led her to a field on the island and told her to search for an icon. After a few of these visions, she told the authorities of the church, and they began searching. And on January 13th, 1823, the workers unearthed a half-buried icon of the Annunciation that showed the Virgin Mary receiving the message from the angel Gabriel. After finding this icon, it is said that they built this church, and soon after that became a major pilgrimage site, and now is the biggest pilgrimage site in Greece. And there's these carpets so that people can crawl on their hands and knees from the port all the way up to the altar. And I've been told that some people will even crawl from their own home to the ferry, on the ferry, and crawl all the way to the sanctuary. And they do this because it is said to have magical properties, and people come here seeking miracles. And thousands make the pilgrimage every year. I grew up as a pretty devout Protestant Christian. And around 20 years old, at some point, I had a realization that I wasn't a Christian anymore. Or at least I didn't believe what I was told I needed to believe to be a Christian. And that wasn't really like a pleasant moment for me. And as time went on, I realized that I don't have an issue with Jesus, or at least I don't think I have an issue with Jesus. My issue was with Christians and Christianity, with organized Christianity, and mainly the Protestant Christians. And I know many Protestants won't agree with what I'm about to say, but what the Protestant Reformation did was it turned Christianity into a relativistic religion where anybody can interpret the Bible and come to their own conclusions, which some people might say is a good thing, but it leads to the infinite amount of variations of Protestantism in America, where they all disagree with each other and there is no unifying force. And I know the Protestants will say that unifying force is Jesus, but whenever you actually look into all the subsects of Protestantism, you realize that functionally that doesn't make any sense. And so when I left Protestant Christianity, I started studying the Eastern religions. And I think now my main issues with Protestantism stem from the foundational belief in individualism and the fact that there is really no form of asceticism or monasteries and monks. Over time, I've grown more and more to like Orthodox Christianity over any other form of Christianity. Because in Orthodoxy, there's this concept they call theosis, union with God. And there's a famous quote by Saint Athanasius of Alexandria, "God became man so that man might become God." And that tracks with me, because what bothers me about many forms of Christianity is an external seeking, when in reality you are connected to God in your heart, and nobody can take that from you. I can't be the only one that feels that we need a renaissance, a rebirth, a re-evaluation of our values as a society. Some are returning to religion, and others are seeking new paths. But in the olden times, they clearly valued something we didn't. I mean, this is a bus station, and I'm not saying that we should return to ancient Rome, but for everything has its season. Relatively recently, I learned about a king that is not discussed much in the public sphere, although many say he was one of the greatest kings that ever lived. A boy who at 9 years old was diagnosed with leprosy, became king at the age of 13, and died at the young age of 24 years old. God rest his soul. King Baldwin IV.
The whole world is in chess. Any move can be the death of you. Do anything except remain where you started, and you cannot be sure of your end. Were you sure of your end once? When I was 16, I won a great victory. I felt in that moment I would live to be 100. Now I know I shall not see 30. None of us know our end, really, or what hand will guide us there. A king may move a man. A father may claim a son. That man can also move himself. And only then does that man truly begin his own game. Remember that howsoever you are played, or by whom, your soul is in your keeping alone. Even though those who presume to play you be kings or men of power, when you stand before God, you cannot say, "But I was told by others to do thus," or that virtue was not convenient at the time. This will not suffice. Remember that.
I'm not one to claim to have the answers. I'm honestly very skeptical of people who claim to have all the answers. I read a lot about virtue, and the thing is, how are you supposed to live a virtuous life in an unvirtuous world, in a society that doesn't value virtue, instead values vice? How can one live a virtuous life when we live in a crabs in the bucket society? It's all just so cringe. And that's the thing that bothers me. It's like, when did society become so cringy? When discussing virtue, it always makes me think of the Kali Yuga. And I just want to read you a quick quote from the Mahabharata. Hanuman began with the Sata Yuga. At that time, every living being was self-realized and devoted to the Supreme Lord's service. With the onset of each successive age, however, everything diminishes and becomes more degraded. Virtue, which was fully manifest in the first age, was diminished by a quarter in each successive age. By now, virtue and religion were 3/4 lost. By the end of the Kali Yuga, it will have disappeared entirely. As the ages progress and virtue diminishes, so the natures and abilities of men undergo diminishment. diminishment, everything becomes inauspicious, and the performance of religious acts in this last age produces contrary results. The story of Hercules is a mortal man teaming up with the gods to slay the Titans. And if only life was that simple, to have it been prophesied what you should do, and that you do it, and that you live out the life of your destiny. But in reality, things are not so clear-cut. And each of us individually has to discover what is the purpose for why you are here. And that is a personal journey you must take on your own or with guides. But the universal principle seems to be that the Holy Spirit is in you, and that we should seek virtue. And that through forgiveness, love, and compassion, that the world will be redeemed. These are clothes we found at one of those donate your clothes dumpster type of things on the side of the road. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and be sure to go over to CaptainSalve.com and get yourself a jar. Big love. Have a great week.